Welcome back. We are continuing our conversation about September 11th, the 20th anniversary, and the 9/11 Museum and Memorial's national campaign that they are launching to learn important lessons from that day. I am speaking right now with Anthony Gardner and his teen daughter all about that day. Anthony lost his brother. Anthony, tell us more about what happened on September 11th, 2001.
My brother Harvey was just 35 years old when he was killed on 9/11. He was working at the World Trade Center. He worked in IT. And that morning he went to work as he did every day. He worked on the 83rd floor of the North Tower. Our family reached him by phone that morning, shortly after his building was hit by American Airlines Flight 11. And from that one brief call, we heard what was going on in his office. We understood that they were trying to figure a way out because there was some smoke outside the entrance to their office space. So that was the only call that we got through to him that day. And, the events unfolded much like millions of people around the world. We watched the events unfold on television in real time. We saw his tower fall, and when we saw that footage, we just hoped that he had had enough time to get out. We spent weeks calling hospitals and searching for him, and then when we realized that he was gone, we just made a pledge as a family to do everything we could to make sure that he would never be forgotten. And so, over the years, we've been able to be active in that effort. We help to support the efforts to preserve the footprints of the Twin Towers, which serve as the settings for the 9/11 Memorial Museum's primary exhibition spaces. So we made that commitment to never forget. And that's why the Never Forget initiative of the 9/11 Memorial Museum resonates so much with our family. It is so important for us to ensure that future generations learn these lessons, learn about the people we lost that day, and also about the way that we responded to these attacks, these brutal attacks on our country. We responded with resilience and hope and compassion for each other. It's the compassion that Harvey showed to his coworkers in those final hours that still are a source of inspiration for me. And, there are stories that I've shared with my teenage daughters who didn't know Harvey in life. They only know him through the stories we tell and from their experiences of visiting the memorial and the museum and learning about 9/11 in school. So what the memorial is doing is so important. I would just encourage Americans across the country to please go to neverforget.org, learn about how they can help. And, we all made a commitment as a country to ensure we all made that pledge to never forget in the aftermath, never forget the people that died, never forget what we experienced as a nation. And we owe it to future generations to keep that promise. And the memorial and the museum is charged with that mission. And I'm hoping that people around the country come together to continue to support it.
Leah, your dad has talked to you and your sisters about the importance of remembering the lessons learned on September 11th, 2001. Tell me about your experiences visiting the museum.
So we got to go to the museum right when it first opened. I think before it opened, we got to go special family pass, and that was crazy. My dad went full tour guide. He he walked us through everything, and he kind of explained it all. And I think it was kind of that moment because I was in middle school, I think. So it was kind of that moment where, because I had heard about it, 9/11, my entire childhood, because he was working to preserve the footprints and working at the museum since I was a little kid. But kind of, you don't necessarily process it. You just hear about it so much, and then you don't really think about what it means really in detail. And then you go there and you see everything. And it's really once I was really old enough to understand the importance of everything. So it really hit home.
Leah, tell me more about how September 11th is being taught in schools right now, especially since you weren't even born when it happened.
So I kind of have a better understanding than most of my classmates just because I have the personal, but it's also because we've the first couple years of school, we weren't, taught it in detail. I think once we got a little older, like maybe sixth grade, seventh grade was like the first times we had the dedicated lessons on the day. I think it was sixth grade. So it's not anybody's fault. It's like they didn't know, because it's like if your parents didn't really tell you that much about it, you had nothing to kind of go off of. But I think that they've made progress, like what's being taught in school.
Yeah, I think my children, certainly as they've gotten older, they've learned more. Their teachers have introduced more details about what happened that day, whether in social studies or a civics class. But again, they've had the benefit of having the direct connection and that sort of prior knowledge of it, just because their family was directly connected to it. But the education, 9/11 education, varies by state, and some schools teach it, some don't. So it's a real issue, and it underscores the importance of the 9/11 Memorial Museum's educational programs. We need to make sure that every student at some point throughout their academic experience learns about what happened to our country on 9/11, learns about how we responded to those attacks with resilience and courage and hope and unity, because these are lessons they're going to need for their whole entire life.
Is there anything else that we need to know or you'd like to add about September 11th and your experiences?
I would just add that I would encourage people, if they haven't visited, or even if they have visited the 9/11 Memorial Museum, to go there. It is a sacred place. Families worked so hard in the early years after 9/11 to preserve the footprints of the Twin Towers, to ensure that the history of these events would be told on the actual site where they occurred. And there's just, I know Leah touched on this, but there's just something to being in the place when you see the monumental artifacts from the day. It brings history to life. You're standing within the footprints of the towers where Harvey and his, countless others lived and worked and died. And it brings history to life for people. And I think it helps them to also understand the enormity of the events and their place in this ongoing 9/11 story. It's an event that continues to affect people. People, unfortunately, are still dying as a result of 9/11, and those who were exposed to the toxins in the air on the day and in the immediate aftermath that was in the dust, the toxic dust. People are still dying 20 years later. The national security implications, the ongoing quest to hold the perpetrators accountable, the war on terror, all of these events are contemporary events. They're still happening. So 9/11 is not a static historic event 20 years in the past. It's real, and it's today. And we need the lessons from 9/11, I think, more now than ever.
Thank you, Anthony and Leah, for sharing your experiences about September 11th and the important lessons learned from that day. We'll be back with more after this.